Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to the Mac Attack channel where scammers, liars, grifters, and their narratives are always what's for dinner. Patreon, like, subscribe, submit, let's go. Space, the final frontier. No, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I never really watched Star Trek. Um, it's not that I don't think I would like it. I feel like I'm the sort of person who is supposed to like and watch Star Trek. But see, the problem is that I generally just really don't get into shows that easily. It's kind of like how I feel like I'm the sort of person who is supposed to enjoy Lord of the Rings, but around the 50th page of nothing but tedious world building, my eyes have glazed over, and I've realized that I do not give a shit about these characters or the tiresome world they live in. They can all drop dead for all I care. How are there still so many pages? Are there going to be any likable characters? Or is everyone in Middle Earth either extremely annoying or kind of a piece of shit? John Ronald Rule Tolkien, I don't know this song, so why are you quoting the lyrics to me? Why are there so many songs? I can't hear this. The audacity of including a map. Get out of here. Sorry, we're talking about space, right? Jeff Bezos, through a combination of luck, an unremarkable amount of hard work, privilege, and most importantly, like all billionaires, a complete and total indifference to the suffering of others, along with an inclination for cruelty and monstrous behavior beyond our ability to even imagine, has a level of resources at his disposal that grant him opportunities most of us don't dare to even dream of. You and I effectively exist in a different universe from him. He exists in a universe where he can just decide, I think I want to go to space. And it happens. He exists in a universe where 6 warehouse employees are dead because the facility collapsed during a tornado and it had no storm shelters, where 7 employees are dead from cardiac arrest due to the pressure put on them, where 11 warehouse employees are dead from injuries ranging from being crushed by malfunctioning forklifts to shredded by defective conveyor belt systems. And yet, he, as far as I know, does not experience any trouble with insomnia. Can you imagine 24 people being dead as a result of the business practices your greed has led to, and like you don't change anything? Like you're just fine with that. And you sleep just fine at night. See, for someone like you or me, that would leave us with debilitating guilt and grief. And while there may be many reasons we're not billionaires, the fact that we actually care when we harm other people is something that renders it a complete impossibility. People don't just accidentally stumble into being a billionaire. It is the result of many very deliberate decisions to choose to enrich yourself despite the suffering you cause others. Think of what you could accomplish with that kind of capital. You could pay your workers better. You could build storm shelters in your warehouses. You could provide better employee safety programs. You could enact productivity targets that would not result in your employees dying of cardiac arrest on your warehouse floors, surrounded by makeshift cardboard barricades while work continues as usual. You could. Well, instead of any of that nonsense, Jeff Bezos decided he wanted to go to space, not for any purpose that would benefit society or humanity as a whole, like not to conduct research, not to discover anything, just as a joyride. And so Blue Origin launched its first flight in July of 2021. Blue Origin flights are about 10 minutes in duration and reach an altitude of around 350,000 feet or 100 kilometers, which is the internationally recognized boundary of space known as the Karman line. The concept of the Karman line is that it is where the atmosphere no longer has a significant effect on an object. An object traveling below the line won't be able to maintain an orbit around Earth due to the atmospheric drag slowing it down. For example, meteors usually burn up between 70 and 100 kilometers in altitude. So, like, how high is that? Let's give some comparisons. The radius of the Earth is about 6,400 kilometers or 4,000 miles. Commercial jets usually fly at altitudes of around 11 to 12 kilometers or 7 miles. The highest altitude ever reached by a jet aircraft was 38 kilometers or 23 miles. Sputnik orbited at 215 kilometers or 130 miles. The International Space Station orbits at around 340 kilometers or 211 miles. Hubble orbits at 595 kilometers or 370 miles. GPS satellites orbit the Earth once every 12 hours at an altitude of 20,350 kilometers or 12,500 miles. Geostationary satellites, such as TV and other communication satellites, as well as meteorology satellites, orbit at 35,786 kilometers or 22,236 miles, because at that altitude it takes exactly 24 hours to complete an orbit, meaning the satellite stays at the same position in the sky and you don't have to keep turning a satellite dish to receive the signal from it. And also that you can keep imaging the same area of the planet, which is what makes it useful for meteorology. The moon orbits at a distance ranging from 362,000 kilometers to 405,400 kilometers, which is about 250,000 miles, which is a fact that I want you to keep in mind for no particular reason going forward. To put that into perspective, that's about the same distance as going around the Earth 10 times. Due to the numerous objectionable aspects of this concept that immediately come to mind for just about any adult with a functioning prefrontal cortex, Blue Origin goes to great lengths to justify their existence and put a positive, greenwashed spin on their business model. I think that the best way to cover this is to just take a look at Blue Origin's video that they feature on their sustainability page on their website, because it is insane. Like, I thought I knew what angle it was going to have and what talking points it was going to hit, and oh my god, I was wrong. There is not the slightest chance I could have predicted where they were going with this.
New Shepherd is just the beginning.
The first step.
From the very start, it's only been about one thing: Earth.
Earth.
Our Blue Origin.
We've sent robotic probes all over the solar system, and it's full of wonders: gas giants, rocky moons.
Earth is the best planet.
I mean, hot take alert.
It is not close.
Despite the variety, despite the wonder in the solar system,
There's no place like home.
Earth is our home, and there is no other place like it.
Yeah.
All life on Earth are uniquely matched to this planet. There's nothing like it anywhere else in the solar system. Not.
It's almost like we evolved here to fit the conditions here.
Even close, no way.
We have no choice but to preserve Earth.
Well, geez, sounds like you're doing it grudgingly.
Preserve this planet. This one.
we get to focus on the future, and the future is nothing without Earth.
For almost all of human history, Earth has seemed big.
It seemed big, but we now know it's small.
It seemed big, but now was small. I'm sorry. It's just, I think it's just the wording is. It just sounds so stupid. Anyway, sorry.
It's finite. And we know that the rate that we're using Earth's resources is not sustainable.
Earth has things that we need to work on
Because we keep trying to launch things into space.
in the here and now.
But there are also long-term problems.
We can't wait.
Guys, there are long-term problems? Why didn't anyone tell me?
To
work on the long-term problems. We have to work on both.
One fundamental long-term problem.
We will run out of energy on
I know, right? Like when sometimes I get home and at, midnight, I'm just like, I gotta.
It's just arithmetic. It's gonna happen. Humans have always used about 100 watts of power. That's our natural metabolic rate.
I mean, it's not really necessarily true. I mean, we've been using like horsepower for a long time.
In our developed technological society, we use over 10,000 watts of power per person.
Wait, what? 10,000 watts? Like what? Like at all times? No, we don't. Maybe you do. We don't. Most people do not use 10,000 watts. Like, even if I added up everything in here, and I'm recording a video right now, by the way, it would not be 10,000 watts. Like, even if I turn on the dryer, it's not going to be 10,000 watts. That's just fact. Like, I don't know where they're getting that from.
Humans' use of energy is not actually a bad thing.
We live in an era of dynamism and growth.
There are so many good things that happen when we use energy.
We do?
Think about technology, transportation, hospitals, data.
As humans,
hospitals, data.
We are at our best when we are inventing, when we are growing, when we are making progress.
But humans are doubling our energy use every 25 years, and that's unsustainable. Today, you could cover all of humanity's energy needs by covering the state of Nevada in solar cells.
This is like a really good example of something that's kind of akin to a straw man, but it's a little bit different from a straw man, where it's just this toxic lack of creativity in thinking about alternatives to fossil fuels and like alternative energy sources, where you either don't think something's worth your time or you don't think that something is solving a real problem or something like that. And so you don't allow any of your creativity to come through. You don't dedicate any time to it.
But at that rate of growth, in 200 years, you'd have to cover the entire planet in solar cells.
I wish I were in a headspace and in a state of beliefs about the world where I felt like it was even reasonable or worth thinking about the idea that there will still be like recognizable, human civilization in 200 years. Like, that must be nice. That must feel like really good. Yeah. I mean, even like 50 years from now, I'm like, like, how is this even worth thinking about? Well, this is one reason why billionaires are such a problem, is because what are you they're thinking about this. Like, how are you thinking about this? Like, how are you not thinking about like actual problems that we're having like right now? Oi.
What can we do? Can we be more efficient? Yes, but we have been.
Today's technology is more efficient in nearly every manner.
We are.
Except it's not. Like, now we're using AI for shit that we never needed it for before, and that's not efficient.
Gaining efficiency. And yet, when we gain more efficiency, what do?
Boy.
We use more energy.
We have an ever-increasing demand for more energy.
So what if we just use less? Well, that doesn't work either. Throttling energy use means slowing down progress.
This attitude is going to get us all killed.
Stop living in a world of abundance and you move to a world of scarcity and rationing.
We already live in a world of scarcity and rationing. You just have billionaire brain rot disease.
There be another way.
There is another way.
I guarantee you're not ready for this. You're not ready for this plot twist, okay? You're not ready for what they're about to propose. It's great. It's the best thing I've ever heard. Yeah, no, I'm telling you right now, you are not ready for fish jelly.
Space.
That's the answer. Space. Well, certainly can't rebut that.
Full of abundant resources and energy. Space is vast and practically limitless.
Yeah, like the distances are kind of a problem, actually. That limitless distance is kind of an issue. Like just because the resources are out there doesn't mean that you can just get them. Like there are resources on Earth that we currently don't bother extracting because it's too much work. So it seems like it might be too much work to go get them from space.
Learn to harness the power of space and the resources of space. We can tap the limitless resources to help preserve this planet.
We can go to space for what we need. We'll make it routine, safe, and cost-effective to get there.
Oh, okay. And destroy the Earth in the process.
We will build the rockets and the destinations for doing real work in space.
Oh, okay. Because, like, it doesn't seem like you're doing any work in space right now. It seems like Blue Origin is just, like, fucking around up there, actually.
We can do even more than this. We can move the most polluting industries from Earth into space.
How? How is that possible? Seriously. How is that possible? It's not. It's not possible. You know what's because they're literally called heavy industries. The resources that would be required to do that, it would never be economically viable. No one's going to do it if they can't earn a profit off of it. And there's no way you could possibly earn a profit off that. You just can't. It's insane to think that this is possible. Think of like how insane it would sound to like have a mine on Earth and then for like, I don't know, aluminum or something. And then the way that you are delivering the materials from that mine is putting them on a jet. Like, doesn't that sound insane? Right. Because that'd be insanely expensive. Okay. So now we're talking about putting them on a rocket. Uh-huh. Okay.
Where they can't hurt the Earth or the environment.
Transporting that much shit into space would hurt the environment greatly.
We can return Earth to a beautiful natural state. It will be like a garden, like a national park, a place for education, for creativity, and for recreation.
How?
A place for enjoyment and for nature to thrive. In space, we can expand humanity. We don't want to leave Earth behind, but preserve it and expand humanity into space.
We can have 1 trillion humans in the solar system, which means we'd have 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins. This would be an incredible civilization.
Humanity will grow and progress and use energy for good.
Humanity can expand into the solar system by building destinations close to Earth, close to our home planet.
New places. Places we haven't even dreamed of yet.
Welcome, pilot. How you doing?
Who are you? What is all this?
I am all that is left of my people. An interactive instruction manual for the incredible vessel you are now helming.
Your people were instruction manuals?
No. Huh?
Places that feel like home. Places where great work can be done using the resources of space.
My people worked themselves into extinction, converting our planet into a navigable space vessel.
An expanse that is meant for everyone, all kinds of people.
This is a hopeful future. An enduring human presence in space.
Why would you do all that?
Because it's cool.
You are on glue. This is insane. This is why, like, why do we let billionaires just say like such dumb stuff? Like, what are you talking about? Why are you wasting our time with this? This is so, the wires have come loose in their brains. How would anything in space ever feel like home? It never would. This isn't Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, okay? That's just a movie. There's some kind of brain disease going on here. I don't understand it. It's insane.
The long-term solution for Earth.
How?
We are building a critical part of the infrastructure that's going to allow others to unlock
the road to space.
Okay. So you're just joyriding and then you're gonna let others do it.
So that future generations can unleash their creativity.
Right. They wouldn't be able to do that on Earth. They need to go to space, obviously.
It won't be easy. Space must become much, much more accessible to make this vision a reality.
Big things start somewhere, and that somewhere happens to be today.
There are certain gates we have to go through, certain prerequisites. If we don't do these, we will never get there.
First, we have to radically lower the cost of access to space.
This means reusable rockets.
We have to get really good at using rockets over and over.
Reusable rockets, reusable engines.
Once you learn how to do that,
now all you need to find is reusable fuel.
you can basically start spinning this flywheel where the more you fly, the cheaper it gets. The cheaper it gets, the more you fly.
Launch, land, repeat.
Going back and landing a rocket is really hard. And it is absolutely essential that we get good at that so that we can drive down the cost of launch vehicles.
You still need fuel to get to space.
BE3, BE4, BE7, all made from the ground up to be reusable propulsion systems.
And what about the propellant?
Operational reusability. That means making space travel as routine as air travel is.
I mean, have you ever noticed how air travel is also causing a bit of a climate disaster? Now imagine space travel.
This is what will radically bring down the cost of getting to space.
Maybe the monetary cost, but certainly not the externalities.
And we are bringing all of that learning to New Glenn, the next step of building the road to space.
Once you have low-cost access to space, the next gate becomes harnessing the resources of the solar system.
I can't get over how I know I'm showing you the whole thing, but like, it's so insane. Like, what?
There are so many more resources up there in space than there is on our planet.
I mean, everyone's familiar with this idea of locally sourced goods, and this is just a really extreme version of that.
The moon is where we'll learn to do all this.
The moon has a vast quantity of resources.
And if we can learn to harness those resources, we can travel without stressing the Earth.
That's the goal. We'll go to space, and we'll use its resources to power our transportation and build destinations.
Anything we need, we will use the stuff in space to make it happen.
How are you going to get to the moon without using the resources that are on Earth? You can't. That's not possible. How are you going to get to the moon without using the resources of Earth?
What is the next thing? We're going back.
It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay.
Okay, you go. You first.
Make no mistake about this. This is not going to get done by any one generation. One of the things that we have to do is inspire those future generations.
Future generations aren't going to exist because you used up all of the resources trying to put them in space and put a bunch of CO2 in the atmosphere. Why go to Venus? We're going to create Venus right here.
This vision of millions of people living and working in space.
How are you going to get millions of people into space? That is so batshit crazy. That is utterly batshit. Oh my God.
The benefit of Earth is a very, very long-term vision.
It's gonna take generations.
We have to make sure that what we're doing today is setting up the next generation.
It's going to take all kinds of people.
Engineers, entrepreneurs, architects, artists, you, your children, your grandchildren.
This is kind of humanity's cathedral, you know.
Imagine thinking that, like, your grandchildren, number one, will exist, and number two, will have anything other than very short, very difficult lives.
Cathedrals took multiple generations of artisans and craftsmen and masons to build. And there was never the expectation that one person would design and fully execute the vision.
We have to inspire the next generation to carry this torch for the benefit of Earth.
For the benefit of Earth.
For the benefit of Earth.
We are Blue Origin.
And we will do all of this.
We'll do all of this.
For the benefit of Earth.
To say that these suborbital flights to the edge of space are even remotely comparable to flying to the moon is so ridiculous. Blue Origin doesn't have anything close to the capabilities for that. Sending something to the moon is a completely different animal. Blue Origin claims that because its rockets are propelled using liquid hydrogen and oxygen, the launches do not produce any carbon dioxide emissions, but instead release water vapor. 2H2 plus O2 yields 2H2O. Sure, fine, whatever. Ignoring the fact that water vapor is not harmless when it is released into the upper atmosphere, there's another issue with this claim, and depressingly few people seem to realize it. And that issue is, where does the hydrogen come from? You can't just like get hydrogen from a hydrogen deposit in the ground. Hydrogen has to be chemically produced somehow. You can't just get energy for free. While it is possible to produce hydrogen from water using electrolysis powered by renewable electricity, doing it that way is prohibitively costly and accounts for less than 4% of worldwide production. Instead, 95% of hydrogen is produced using steam reformation, which is reacting water with natural gas or oil to produce carbon dioxide and hydrogen gas, or by coal gasification, a similar process that produces carbon dioxide and hydrogen gas. Based on the fact that Blue Origin doesn't say where they get their hydrogen from, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it almost certainly comes from steam reformation or coal gasification. So while it's technically true that their rocket doesn't directly emit carbon dioxide, it's also lying by omission. An emission omission, okay. The Blue Origin rocket is estimated to use about 2 to 3 tons of hydrogen, resulting in 18 to 36 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions from the steam reformation process to produce it. The fuel also has to be liquefied and cryogenically stored, which is estimated to produce 2 to 4 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Adding in the estimated 5 to 10 metric tons of CO2 emitted through manufacturing and logistics, and that's 25 to 50 metric tons of CO2 emitted per launch, which is about 30 times the CO2 emission of a transatlantic flight, or 6 times the amount of CO2 emissions of an average US household in an entire year for a 10-minute joyride. But that's just their new Shepherd vehicle. That's their joyride vehicle, the 10-minute up and downy one. The problem with using only hydrogen and oxygen as fuels is that while they're clean burning, they're just not very powerful. The current Blue Origin flights are pretty close to the maximum that a hydrogen-oxygen system is capable of. Going any higher or into orbit would require a different fuel system. So that's why Blue Origin has developed their bigger, more powerful rocket, the New Glenn. This thing is 320 feet in length and has 2 stages. The second stage is basically their New Shepard rocket design. The first stage, though, burns liquid natural gas. Natural gas is mostly methane, which is CH4. Combustion means reacting that with oxygen. So CH4 plus 3O2 yields 2 CO2 and 2 H2O. What? I must have made a mistake here. CO2 from a Blue Origin rocket? But I thought their launches were so green and that they cared deeply about the imminent environmental catastrophe. It's almost like there's no such thing as green space travel. Yeah, it turns out that in order to do anything other than these little sightseeing missions, they have to use a rocket that directly produces a fuckload of carbon dioxide. It's estimated that a typical New Glenn launch will burn 175 to 280 metric tons of methane, pumping 500 to 800 metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is equivalent to the annual emissions of 50 to 80 US households. They say, we envision a future where millions of people will live and work in space with a single-minded purpose to restore and sustain Earth, our Blue Origin. How exactly are you going to send millions of people to live and work in space without basically causing the apocalypse? I mean, thank God we're going to be moving our heavy industry to outer space and our mining to the moon. Otherwise, that would be really worrisome. It's a clever little bait and switch, isn't it? They say they're so green and that their launches don't directly emit carbon dioxide. Yeah, for now, until you need to do anything more involved than launching a few people in a capsule ballistically to 100 kilometers. Anything into orbit, 500 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Anything higher than 100 kilometers, 500 metric tons of carbon dioxide. We can't do that without effectively destroying the Earth as we know it for millions of people. We just can't. It's not possible. Safety is another issue that they have to fire up their PR machine for, with an entire page on their website dedicated to it. If I were thinking about taking a Blue Origin flight, I would not consider this page to have adequately addressed my concerns. You see, the rocket consists of the booster and the crew module, which is the dickhead of this gigantic dick. Yeah, take a look at it. The primary focal point of their safety messaging is that the crew module can escape from the rocket successfully at any phase of flight, meaning the module can blast itself off of the rocket if something were to go wrong, like an explosion. That's great and all, but my first question was, what happens if the cabin depressurizes? The Armstrong limit, which is the altitude above which water boils at approximately human body temperature, is 63,000 feet or 12 miles or 19 kilometers. They launched to 100 kilometers. If my algebra and physics is correct, that means you're spending almost 4.5 minutes above the Armstrong limit, and it only takes 60 to 90 seconds for pressure that low to be deadly. They say they have oxygen masks available, but oxygen masks don't help above 15 kilometers because the pressure is still too low to prevent hypoxia. To survive a depressurization at that altitude, a pressure suit is required, and Blue Origin passengers don't wear pressure suits. I mean, they can do whatever the hell they want, but they should probably be aware that it would not be the first time a small capsule of unpardonably wealthy people experienced a deadly pressure-related failure. And there is precedent suggesting that if the same were to happen to a Blue Origin flight, the response to their deaths would be largely jocular and celebratory. How many dives did it take for Titan to implode again? 87? It'll happen. It's a question of when, not if, especially given that Blue Origin is for profit. My other safety concern would be the fact that the capsule uses 3 parachutes to slow its landing speed and presumably to maintain orientation. Blue Origin claims that the capsule can land safely with only a single parachute. However, they list basically every testing milestone on their website's safety section, like first successful 3 parachute landing, and then it says first successful landing with only 2 of 3 parachutes, but it doesn't actually say when or if they've actually tested it with just 1 parachute. And given that on at least one of their flights, they've had 1 parachute fail to deploy, it doesn't seem outlandish to expect there to inevitably be an instance where 2 parachutes fail to deploy. Have they actually tested it with 1 parachute? And if so, why did they not list that milestone in their safety test list when they list everything else? If they haven't tested it with 1 parachute, why haven't they? And how can they possibly say that it can safely land with only 1? It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know about that, but I mean, whatever. Finally, there's the glaring issue of optics. NASA is being gutted, just like every other government agency that produces fundamental research, by a candidate you donated vast sums of money to and intervened to stop the Washington Post. That's the outlet you said you'd have no editorial control of when you bought it, from endorsing the opposing candidate of, and you're joyriding to space? Are you serious? Most of these launches happen in Culberson County, Texas. The median income for a family in that county is $28,547. 25% of the county lives in poverty. I bet it's truly a bright, shiny moment of joy when you're walking 2.5 hours to your shitty job at Dollar General because your car broke down and you can't afford to fix it, and there's no bus service this early, and then, you know, on the horizon you see Jeff's dick rocket blasting off on another 10-minute joyride consuming hydrogen that was produced by blasting an amount of CO2 into the atmosphere that would have taken you and your family 10 years to emit if your car hadn't broken down. Now it's looking more like 20 years, depending on when you're finally able to get wheels again. Blue Origin spins it as expanding access to space, but you know they're not talking about access for you. For these unconscionably rich people, that rocket could be for them, a possibility worth considering. Maybe they'll put down a deposit to be on the next one, depending on how their schedule is looking for that date. For you, thinking that you will ever go to space is as ridiculous as thinking at some point in your life you might take the One Ring to Mordor and drop it off, or that you should double check your closet to see if any of them have a portal to Narnia. No, it's only for those with enough money or status, raising further questions about who gets to go and why exactly it's these people who get to go. For example, there's been a flight where a rather prominent person from the entertainment industry was aboard. It attracted a ton of media attention, and I think it deserves a lot of criticism. And you know who I'm talking about. Say it with me now. William Shatner. William Shatner. I don't know who you thought I was going to say. Is it because I said I thought it deserved criticism? You know he's not actually the captain of a spaceship, right? Captain Kirk is not real. He's a character. William Shatner is an actor. He works in entertainment. Okay? That said, if you don't think it deserves criticism, you're certainly not alone. Public response to that flight was largely positive and affectionate, both on social media and in coverage from major news outlets, although there were some isolated negative takes out there. typically criticizing the environmental impact and characterizing it as a frivolous thing to do in October 2021 at the height of the pandemic. This stands in stark contrast to the Blue Origin launch that occurred on April 14th of 2025 that had an all-female set of 6 passengers, Jeff Bezos' fiancée Lauren Sanchez, and 5 women she handpicked, with by far the biggest name among them being Katy Perry. Public response was overwhelmingly and intensely negative, basically reversing the proportions of the NS-18 launch with William Shatner. And that is why I wanted to make this video. 2 flights with the same impacts and costs, but wildly different public responses. That's interesting, and I want to see if we can figure out why. Well, my first instinct for why the temperature of the public response was so much frostier this time is, of course, simple misogyny. Shatner is a man, all of these passengers are women. Certainly would not be the first time it's happened. However, as I looked through the coverage and response, the less convinced I was of this, mostly because of the general tone of it. It didn't feel as unabashedly mean as the other examples, and I am normally very team misogyny. That didn't come out right. I mean, I normally favor explaining something as being misogyny. Like Amber Heard, misogyny. Gamergate, misogyny. This didn't have the same vicious aura to it. It might be contributing to some of the response, but I don't feel like it satisfactorily explains all or even most of it. So what else could it be? I have some hypotheses. The first hub on my yarn board is the public relations spin of the flight. Blue Origin always seems to have some sort of flimsy pseudo-progressive angle when it comes to the passenger list of a flight, and in particular, there will be 1 or more passengers aboard each mission that will cause you to sound like a real asshole for criticizing it. Basically, they're a human shield against negative public sentiment and general social media vitriol. On the first mission with human passengers, the human shield was Wally Funk, a former military test pilot and member of the Mercury 13, who were 13 women who completed astronaut training in the 1960s but never got to go to space. With the Blue Origin flight, she became the oldest woman to travel to space at age 82. Another notable human shield was Ed Dwight, who was appointed in 1961 by JFK to the Aerospace Research Pilot School, making him the first Black astronaut candidate. After JFK's assassination, he was never selected and did not get to reach space until the Blue Origin flight NS-25. Do you see what I mean? I'm not saying that these individuals were duped or should not have taken up the offer or anything, and I'm sure the flights meant more to them than I can possibly imagine. However, it's just objectively true that these stories are very effective ways to make billionaire space tourism easier for the public to swallow and to deflect legitimate criticism of frivolous space flights. This becomes very obvious when you look at whom the other passengers on these flights are. Luckily, we can take a look at the lists and bios on Supercluster. Oh, did you not know about Supercluster? Well, Supercluster is a website that tracks space flights, fawns over every new bullshit thing Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos fart into space, and most importantly for our purposes, completely unironically, with not the slightest hint of satire, maintains an astronaut database that includes every commercial passenger as if they were an actual astronaut. Did you know we're currently in a new golden age of space? I was not aware. Go figure. I need to show you this astronaut database, even though you're going to think I've doctored it or something, because it's insane. So here we are. Let's see who all is here. Looks like we've got some big names. We got Tracy Dyson, Joe Engel, Jack Fisher. Oh, there's John Glenn, a fellow Ohioan. Cool. Yep. Richard Gordon, Virgil Grissom, Susan Helms, Terrence Henricks, Joan Higginbotham. Cool. The first time I saw this, it just left me speechless. What is happening? This is surreal. It's simultaneously one of the funniest, saddest, and most disrespectful things I've ever seen in my entire life. What? They even include puffy little bios for each of them. My primary goal by going through these is not to just roast these people, but it is a secondary goal, because how dare you have yourselves on here next to actual astronauts? You were more than happy to put this garbage up here. I'm just spreading the good news. Okay, so we have our human shield Ed Dwight on NS-25, and then these are the other 5 passengers, okay? All right, we got Kenneth Hess, who created Family Tree software that got bought by Ancestry.com, and who also founded a nonprofit called Science Buddies that provides science experiment ideas for kids in school. Also, one of his employees wrote his suspiciously biographical and dubiously notable Wikipedia article, which, to my incredulous joy, Supercluster actually excerpts right below his little bio, as if to say, yeah, he's got a Wikipedia article, because, you know, when you order your employee to compose a Wikipedia article about you, that is usually what occurs next. Weird flex, but okay. I would have loved to see the notes going back and forth about that in progress article. Okay, next passenger is Carol Schaller, whose Supercluster bio reads, Carol is a retired CPA. In 2017, her doctor told her she would likely go blind. She has since traveled to 25 countries around the world, visited Mount Everest Base Camp, trekked to the windy, impenetrable forest of Uganda to see mountain gorillas, visited the South Pole, and camped in a tent in the desolate Antarctic plain at -20 degrees. Seeing Earth's thin layer of atmosphere in the blackness of space will fulfill a lifelong dream. Okay, I remind you that a seat on the first Blue Origin launch was auctioned off for $28 million in 2018, and that to even apply to be on a flight, you have to pay a $150,000 deposit. So, retired CPA and... A great example of the mystery money phenomenon, often found in coverage of this topic, or of people who bought a house at 30 allegedly by saving up, or van life influencers or off-grid influencers. Their life is impossible without there being massive quantities of unexplained money, but they're certainly not going to bring it up. All right, next guy, we got Sylvain, who is the founder of a brewery in France, one of the largest craft breweries. He was born in the French Alps and is a lifelong aviator and skier. He earned his pilot's license at age 16. After spending several summers in Florida, taking additional flying lessons and watching space shuttle launches, Sylvain entered mandatory service in the French military, where he served as a ski instructor for the French Air Force and NATO pilots. Following the military, he pursued an international MBA at Temple University and moved to Tokyo to study business in Japan. So again, mystery money, ridiculous. I bet that brewery doesn't even turn a profit because it doesn't matter, because his family is old money or some shit. Yeah. Ridiculous. Next, we've got Gopi Thodakura. Gopi is a pilot and aviator who learned to fly before he could drive. Mystery money strikes again. Next. Finally, we have Mason Angel, who might have the most gay porn real name I've ever heard, and who also is, quote, the founder of Industrious Ventures, a venture capital fund supporting early stage companies that enable or progress new industrial revolutions. Guys, I'm so sorry. I must have just had a stroke. Let me start that sentence over. Mason is the founder of Industrious Ventures, a venture capital fund supporting early stage companies that enable or progress new industrial revolutions. Oh, I guess I actually read it correctly the first time. Can you blame me for doubting? Mason is an active member in his family's foundation, and there you go. Your family's rich, so you get to do your bullshit venture capital garbage. Do these people think that we wouldn't also do those things if our families had money? Do you see how different the optics would have been if they had been the only 5 people aboard that flight? The articles would be written and they'd have to briefly describe those 5 people. Instead, the articles will mostly focus on Ed Dwight and probably not even mention the other passengers at all. Similarly, William Shatner was the human shield of his flight, being both a widely loved actor and 90 years old, a fact that Blue Origin spared no expense to make sure you were aware that made him the oldest person to be in space. Every Blue Origin launch is 3 to 5 people who are rich beyond any semblance of being morally appropriate, plus 1 or 2 passengers that are there to serve as a distraction from the dystopian optics of space tourism by forcing the press to cover them and the pseudo-progressive narrative about them because it would be really weird if they didn't. It's honestly kind of brilliant. There are a lot of decisions about writing that are matters of taste, style, or opinion, but that's not one of them. It would be objectively bad journalism to cover NS-25 and not talk about Ed Dwight, or to talk about him after talking about the other passengers. Now, NS-31, the flight featuring Katy Perry, was a little bit different in that the passengers were a list chosen by Lauren Sanchez, who just incidentally happens to be the fiance of Jeff Bezos and would also be a passenger. It's unclear if any of them had to pay for the privilege. I would guess they did not since they were invited, but Blue Origins never discloses if passengers paid or how much they paid. The flight, which was carrying only women as passengers, was very aggressively publicized, with the pseudo-progressive angle being that the flight was a historic moment in feminism. I'm not making that up. The Blue Origin press release actually describes this joyride as historic and refers to the 6 passengers as astronauts, pointing out that this is the first all-female flight crew since Valentina Tereshkova's solo spaceflight in 1963. And this right here, this bewilderingly out-of-touch, tone-deaf, valor-robbing, self-important, arrogant, delusional, oblivious corporate #girlboss messaging is, in my opinion, one of the key reasons the reaction was so intense and so negative. And yes, they actually used the #girlboss. Because first of all, you are not astronauts. You're not a flight crew. I don't care if you have some private definition that makes it technically true. You know what a flight crew is. That's why you don't board a plane and try to get in the cockpit, because the cockpit is for the flight crew and you're a passenger. You're not a member of the fucking flight crew. The flight crew controls the flight. Seriously, how dare you compare yourselves to Valentina Tereshkova or Sally Ride? Get their names out of your fucking mouths. Are you serious? Valentina Tereshkova orbited the Earth 48 times under manual control with an altitude over 200 kilometers and was in space for 70 hours, and she had to use an ejector seat to land safely. How you can think that this Blue Origin joyride is remotely comparable is beyond me. It's honestly fascinating to me how these rich fucks are so desperate to cosplay as being more important and accomplished than they actually are. You can't just enjoy the pretty view out the window on your little climate-destroying rocket thrill ride and then quietly go home to your mansion of luxury beyond any moral justification. No, that's not good enough. You need everyone to call you part of a flight crew, to consider you an astronaut, to acknowledge that the ride you went on was not just a thrill ride, it was a historic journey, as if it somehow required any input or training other than money from you. It is as ridiculous as getting off a commercial flight and calling yourself a flight crew member. It's exactly the same thing. Second of all, how exactly is this some kind of feminist moment? Precisely what exactly is being done here that women haven't done before? Please explain to the rest of the class who this is paving the way to what for. Okay, Sally Ride had to get actual astronaut training with a bunch of creepy nerds and grab-assing test pilots making disgusting sexist jokes referring to her as recreational equipment, and also...
Remember when NASA sent a woman to space for only 6 days and they gave her 100 tampons. 100 tampons. And they asked, will that be enough? Cause they didn't know if that was enough. These are our nation's greatest minds. They are literally rocket scientists. They also tied the tampons together by the strings like sausages.
There's more to that song. You should check it out at the link. Very, very good, very funny. They actually have the audacity to say that it's going to inspire young girls. What the fuck are you talking about? Inspired to do what exactly? Inspired to marry a wealthy man and enjoy the benefits of said wealth? Isn't that literally the one thing that women in every culture in society and through all of history have always been permitted to do? That's the entire reason you were on the rocket. It's not because you were qualified or demonstrated some kind of skill or completed some kind of challenge or had more knowledge. No, it's because Lauren Sanchez's fiance, Jeff Bezos, owns the rocket. Women have been doing that for thousands of years. I mean, really, Sally Ride's first mission was over 40 years ago. Valentina Tereshkova's mission was 62 years ago. There have been many, many, many women in space since then. It's almost like you're pretending that they haven't been. It's really weird. But Lauren Sanchez's fiance is not the only thing that's rich. You know what else is rich? Choosing of all possible celebrities you could take on your female empowerment, historic feminist moment spaceflight, to take Katy Perry. Katy Perry. Of all celebrities and of all times now in 2025, you pick Katy Perry. And that's another reason why the reaction was so negative and so vehement this time. I mean, it fits. Katy Perry is basically at an all-time low in her public perception after her disastrous comeback attempt with her honestly startlingly uninspired song and wholly purposeless and valueless accompanying video, Woman's World. It's exactly the type of oblivious corporate feminism simulator that this flight is. Worst of all, she worked with sexual predator and rapist Dr. Luke. Was there nobody else who could help you produce songs that terrible? Like feminism? Like how? How do you choose Katy Perry for this right now? How out of touch can you possibly be? Like, is that never mind. These people were actually surprised at the negative public response to their publicity stunt. So apparently you can indeed be very fucking out of touch, okay? On top of that, the statements made to the media prior to the launch also did not help. I think that it's good to not always take things seriously, but it starts to get seriously annoying when you don't take anything seriously, particularly when you're using a fuckload of resources and money on an opportunity most people will never have. A little bit of reverence, at minimum, would be nice to see. So it is probably not going to be well received when you are informing us that you're going to be causing space to finally get glam with fake eyelashes and whatever else, and that you will be putting the ass in astronaut. Fuck you. I mean, have you not seen photos of a young Yuri Gagarin? I'm just saying. Let's take a look at a few clips from this AP interview she gave prior to the flight.
Cosmos by Carl Sagan and reading a book on string theory, and yeah, I was like going to bed. That was definitely like helping. I was like, Pythagoras, Pythagoras. But you know, I've always been interested in astrophysics and interested in astronomy and astrology and the stars. I feel like we are all made of stardust and we all come from the stars, and it'll be exciting to see them twinkle from that site.
Well, you're going to be disappointed because twinkling, or to be fancy about it, scintillation, is caused by light passing through the atmosphere. So when you are above the Karman line, there's no scintillation. Stars twinkle more intensely than planets do because the apparent size of a planet in the sky is large enough to average out the effects of the atmosphere, whereas a star is just a single point of light because they're so far away. You can also see the same effect when you're looking at distant city lights. The intensity of the effect in both cases depends on the weather conditions, and it, along with any other distortions caused by the atmosphere, is reported in astronomical observation forecasts as astronomical seeing. If there's good astronomical seeing, that means there's very little distortion or twinkling being caused by the atmosphere on that particular night in that location. To be clear, I don't expect people to know this stuff, but like, why do they insist on pretending to be interested in it or knowledgeable about it when they clearly aren't? Like, I do not understand this behavior. I really don't. It's so baffling. Tangentially related, but another misconception I want to dispel is that these passengers and even crew on the ISS, for example, they're not experiencing zero gravity or microgravity. Gravity is still over 90% as strong, even in low Earth orbit. That's why orbiting is possible. If there were no gravity up there, a satellite would just keep traveling in a straight line. But they don't, because they're constantly falling toward Earth. They don't get closer to the ground because they're traveling horizontally at such a high speed that the Earth is curving away just as fast as they're falling toward it. And if you do that at an altitude where there's almost no atmosphere and therefore no air resistance, you can keep doing that for a very, very long time. The phenomenon they're experiencing is weightlessness, and that's the result of being in free fall. If you've ever been on a drop tower ride or gone skydiving, same deal. You're falling with nothing pushing back on you, which feels like not having weight. Except some drop tower rides like Disney's Tower of Terror and rides built by Utah's own S&S Power, like the one at Knott's Berry Farm or Power Tower at Cedar Point. Those are not free falls. Those actually pull the car down faster than gravity, as my fellow Ohioans will know based on the fact that you could put a penny on your knee and it'd float in front of you on Demon Drop, but it doesn't really work on Power Tower. The reason that the penny floats instead of staying on your leg is because you're a squishy flesh bag, and when the free fall begins, elastic rebound of your skin kicks the penny up a little bit. The final factor in my hypothesis for explaining the difference in public response is that there has been a significant worsening in sentiment toward the ultra wealthy just in the past few years, since 2021. Like, let me tell you something about Americans. Every American just thinks they're not a billionaire yet. At least historically, this was true. They think their big break is like right around the corner. However, I feel like this has rapidly changed, particularly since the beginning of the pandemic. I think the clearest sign of this shift was with the almost universally celebratory reaction to the assassination of United Healthcare executive Brian Thompson. I don't know how much of my political beliefs I've shared here, but my political beliefs are like 90% guillotine. Like, if I were in charge, I'm not sure what I would make the network cut off. We could talk about it and work out a number, but guillotine. And even I was surprised at the public response to that assassination. And the other obvious example would be the relatively unfazed and somewhat positive response to the Titan submersible implosion. So I think that even just in those past few years, I think that has started to really change. And I think that's some of the exasperation we're seeing here. I think that the generalized aura of fawning admiration of billionaires has really started to boil away, and personally, I'm hoping for that to continue. I mean, Based on the way they publicize these space joyrides and call themselves astronauts and write about themselves like some kind of amazing heroes, it seems like it is very important to them that they get our respect and admiration. And as such, it is my pleasure to dispense mockery and derision instead. Wow, this video got long. But yeah, that's Blue Origin and my analysis of the intense public reaction to their most recent fight. I had a good time doing this. I hope it was good for you, baby. If you'd like me to analyze more public outcries or moral panics in a similar vein, leave your suggestions in the comments. This was a little bit different for me. I am on Instagram and Blue Sky as Matt Kozelka. You can join my Patreon to see videos a day early, and you can check out the Matt Kozelka channel for my less attacky videos. Everything's going to be linked in the description. I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye! Liar, liar, bullshit supplier, plundered words, counterfeit dreams you sell. Liar, liar, gaslights just start fires. Guess you'll feel at home when you burn in hell. Whoa, liar, liar, oh liar, liar, oh liar, liar. Rachel Hollis, Grant Cardone, Joyce Meyer, Jerry Clark, Dan Bania, Tony Robbins, liars. Whoa, liar, liar, oh liar, liar, oh liar, liar. Flim flam faker, self-help dumpster fire.